The day she stopped begging, her husband didn't notice at first. There was no fight, no shouting, no long message explaining her pain. She simply stopped trying. And that quiet change did something years of arguments never could. At first, her husband felt free, then confused, then afraid. Because when a woman stops begging, it doesn't mean she stopped loving. It means she stopped needing. And that is when the power shifts. Stay until the end of this story because if you have ever felt ignored, taken for granted, or emotionally exhausted in love, this lesson may change how you see relationships forever. Chapter 1. She loved louder than he listened. Sarah loved deeply. When she loved, she gave her full heart, her full time, and her full attention. She believed love meant effort. If something felt wrong, she talked about it. If Michael became distant, she tried harder. Michael was not cruel. He was simply comfortable. He listened, but not fully. He cared, but not urgently. When Sarah spoke about her feelings, he often nodded, said a few calm words, and moved on. To him, problems passed quickly. To Sarah, they stayed. She noticed small things first. Michael checking his phone while she spoke. Michael promising change but forgetting the next week. Michael acting surprised every time she was hurt, as if the pain was new. Sarah explained herself again and again. She changed her tone. She chose softer words. She waited for the right moment. She believed if she communicated better, he would finally understand. But understanding never came. Slowly, Sarah became louder with her love. She gave more care, more patience, more forgiveness. She filled every silence, afraid that quiet meant distance. Michael learned something without realizing it. No matter how little he gave, Sarah stayed. No matter how tired she felt, she returned. Her loyalty was certain. Her presence was guaranteed. And that certainty made him relax. Sarah thought she was building love. She didn't know she was teaching him how little effort was required to keep her. Chapter 2. Begging became her language. Over time, Sarah stopped asking for big things. She didn't ask for deep talks anymore. She didn't ask for emotional safety. She asked for small things instead. Can we spend some time together tonight? Can you listen to me for a minute? Can you please not ignore me when I'm upset? Without noticing, love turned into requests. Requests turned into explanations, and explanations slowly turned into begging. Sarah hated that feeling. She told herself she was just being open, just being honest. But deep inside, she felt smaller every time she had to ask Michael to care. Michael didn't see it as begging. To him, Sarah was emotional, sensitive. He believed relationships were not that serious. If she was upset, she would calm down. She always did. When Sarah cried, he felt uncomfortable, not concerned. When she pulled away for a moment, he waited. She always came back. So he stopped trying to understand her pain. He learned patterns instead. If he stayed silent long enough, the problem disappeared. If he apologized quickly, without change, peace returned. Sarah adjusted herself to survive the relationship. She lowered expectations. She accepted less attention. She told herself love required patience. But patience without respect slowly becomes self-betrayal. And each time Sarah begged for emotional crumbs, Michael felt more in control, without ever meaning to hurt her. Chapter 3. His comfort was built on her anxiety. Michael felt safe in the relationship, too safe. He knew Sarah would worry if he pulled away. He knew she would text again if he didn't reply.
He knew she would explain herself if he stayed silent. Her anxiety protected his comfort. Sarah lived in emotional tension. She watched his moods. She studied his tone. She tried to prevent problems before they happened. Loving Michael felt like walking carefully on a floor that could break at any moment. Michael never felt that fear. He assumed love was stable because Sarah made it stable. She carried the emotional weight for both of them. When things felt off, she fixed them. When distance appeared, she closed it. This imbalance slowly shaped the relationship. Michael relaxed more. He put in less effort. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't need to. Sarah would always adjust. But anxiety is exhausting. One evening, Sarah realized she was tired, not of Michael, but of fighting for emotional safety alone. She noticed how calm he looked while she struggled, how peaceful he felt while she overthought everything. That was the first crack. She didn't confront him, she didn't accuse him, she simply noticed the truth. Michael's comfort was built on her fear of losing him, and the moment she saw that clearly, something inside her began to change.
Chapter 4. The moment something inside her broke. The moment was small, almost invisible. Sarah was talking about her day, nothing dramatic, just something that hurt her feelings. Michael was scrolling on his phone. He nodded once, said, "You're thinking too much," and kept scrolling. That was it. No shouting, no argument, no tears falling right away. Something inside Sarah went quiet. She suddenly understood that it wasn't her words that were failing, it was her audience. She had spent years trying to explain her pain to someone who felt no urgency to hear it. For the first time, she didn't feel angry. She felt clear. She realized she had been asking Michael to give what he didn't know how to offer, and every time she begged, she pushed herself lower just to keep him comfortable. That night, Sarah didn't send a long message. She didn't replay the conversation in her head. She didn't plan how to talk better next time. She simply stopped. Not because she stopped caring, but because she finally cared about herself. Michael noticed nothing. He assumed everything was fine. After all, Sarah always returned to normal. But something had shifted. Sarah was no longer desperate to be understood. She was no longer afraid of silence. And when fear disappears, control quietly leaves with it. Chapter 5. She didn't leave, she detached. Sarah didn't pack her bags. She didn't threaten to leave. She didn't give an emotional speech. She stayed, but differently. She stopped explaining her feelings when Michael dismissed them. She stopped chasing conversations that led nowhere. She stopped reacting quickly. Her voice became calm, short, neutral. When Michael was distant, she didn't ask why. When he ignored a message, she didn't send another. When he changed plans, she accepted it, without complaint and without disappointment. This confused Michael. He expected emotions. He expected questions. He expected effort. Instead, Sarah focused on herself. She slept better. She spent time alone. She laughed without waiting for his attention. Detachment was not punishment, it was protection. For the first time, Sarah stopped investing emotional energy where it wasn't returned. She wasn't cold, she wasn't rude, she was simply no longer available for emotional neglect. Michael felt the difference, but he couldn't explain it. Something that used to be guaranteed was no longer certain, and uncertainty makes people uncomfortable. Chapter 6. Confusion replaced control. At first, Michael enjoyed the silence. No arguments, no emotional talks, no pressure. But soon, the quiet felt strange. Sarah didn't ask how he was feeling. She didn't complain. She didn't adjust herself around his mood. Michael started watching her more closely. He noticed she no longer waited for his replies. She no longer reacted strongly. She smiled, but not for him. That was when confusion turned into fear. Michael tried small tests. He delayed replies. Sarah stayed calm. He became distant. Sarah didn't chase. For the first time, his usual patterns didn't work. He felt something slipping, but he didn't know what. Control doesn't disappear loudly. It fades when the other person stops feeding it. And Sarah had stopped feeding it completely. Michael wasn't losing Sarah yet, but he could feel the balance changing, and that scared him. Chapter 7. Silence did what words never could. Sarah's silence was not angry, it was peaceful. She spoke when necessary, she listened without over-explaining. She stopped filling the space with emotions that were never respected. Michael felt the difference deeply. When Sarah used to talk, he felt in control. He could respond later. He could minimize her feelings. He could promise change. But silence gave him nothing to manage. Now, when something felt off, there was no argument to end, no tears to calm, no explanation to ignore. Michael started conversations. He asked questions. He checked her mood, not because she demanded attention, but because her absence of need unsettled him. Sarah didn't use silence as a weapon. She used it as a boundary. She stopped forcing connection where there was no effort. And for the first time, Michael felt what Sarah had felt for years: uncertainty. Silence forced him to think, to notice, to reflect. Words had failed because they were ignored. Silence worked because it could not be dismissed. Sarah finally understood a powerful truth. People value what they feel they can lose. Chapter 8. Panic reveals the truth. Michael's confusion slowly turned into panic. He began to feel replaceable. Sarah no longer waited for his validation. She no longer needed his attention to feel calm. Her peace existed without him, and that frightened him. He tried affection, unexpected messages, small compliments. He wanted to bring her back to the role she once played. But Sarah didn't rush. She accepted kindness without attachment. She listened without leaning. She stayed grounded. Michael realized something uncomfortable. Sarah was not reacting anymore, and reaction had always been his reassurance. When he imagined losing her, he didn't feel heartbreak. He felt loss of control. He feared becoming irrelevant. That realization exposed the truth. Love that survives only on someone else's fear is not love. It is dependence. Sarah saw the change clearly. Michael wanted her again, but only when she stopped needing him, and that told her everything she needed to know. Chapter 9. She finally chose herself. Sarah reached a calm decision. Whether Michael changed or not no longer mattered. She had already changed. She stopped measuring her worth by his effort. She stopped waiting to be chosen. She chose herself, quietly, without anger. Her happiness was no longer conditional. Her peace became non-negotiable. Michael felt the distance grow, not because Sarah pushed him away, but because she stopped pulling him closer. She realized something simple but powerful. Love should feel safe, not stressful, and any connection that requires begging is not love, it is emotional survival. Sarah didn't need revenge. She needed self-respect, and once she found it, she knew she would never beg again. Chapter 10. The Lesson That Changes Everything. Sarah understood the lesson too late, but not too late to save herself. Begging had never brought her closer to Michael. It only taught him that her love was unconditional, while his effort was optional. Detachment changed everything, not because it punished him, but because it freed her. She learned that the person who cares less often holds more power, not because they are cruel, but because they are not afraid to walk away emotionally. Michael's panic didn't come from love alone. It came from losing certainty, losing control, losing the comfort of knowing Sarah would always adjust. That truth was painful, but honest. Sarah realized that real love does not grow when one person carries all the emotional weight. Love grows when both people are equally afraid of losing each other. She stopped begging for attention. She stopped explaining her pain. She stopped proving her worth. And in that space, she discovered peace. Whether Michael stayed or left no longer defined her future. She had already taken her power back. The strongest message she ever sent was not spoken. It was her silence. This story is not about making someone panic. It is about what happens when you stop abandoning yourself for love. The moment Sarah stopped begging, she stopped bleeding emotionally. She didn't become cold, she became clear. Clear that love without respect is not love. Clear that explaining your pain to someone who benefits from your patience will never change them. And clear that silence, when chosen from strength, is not weakness. It is power. If this story feels personal, ask yourself one honest question tonight. Where am I begging for what I should be receiving freely? And if you are ready to stop chasing validation and start choosing self-respect, stay connected to this channel, because the day you stop begging is the day your life begins to change.